liberty in America is under assault. We no longer live in a reality that includes property rights. We're no longer the kings of our own castle. We no longer enjoy the true benefits of capitalism. Instead, we're negotiating our rights with our own government. This isn't how our country was founded. These aren't the ideas of our founders. It's time to seize back our country. This is the Liberty Hour, where these important issues will be discussed for the sake of America's future. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other, here's your host, Sean Thompson.
This is the Liberty Hour podcast. Wednesday, give us a call. We are live, baby. 312-642-5600. And yes, we're going to get to Pritzker, making Illinois the most progressive state for abortion rights, which is the scariest state for babies. We will get to that, but there's something that I woke up a little late today, I must confess. I'm obsessed with this Netflix. I can't stop watching it till like 2 in the morning. So I'm missing the whole morning show. So I'm not quite sure what Prof's clips are in regards to Nick Sandmann, which, by the way, if you're going to be involved in a nationwide scandal, that's the name. How do you not go into like MMA, the Sandman, middleweight? I love it. And we will get to Nick Sandmann. But one thing in pertaining to Sandmann is this SNL writer who tweeted, it is all over the news. I mean, I understand, this is a podcast. We can cover this. I don't know how you'd cover it on air. I'd probably do it and then get everybody in trouble. But the, what the hell is her name? Beatty. Sarah Beatty. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, she's a looker. She's not bad at all, kid. Justin in there. If you were heterosexual, you'd dig this chick. Anyway, she tweets to anyone. Wait a minute. Oh, I will give, how does she word it here? Here it is. I will blow whoever manages to punch that MAGA kid in the face. Now listen, these are 17 and 16-year-old kids. Does anybody remember being a kid, a 16, 17-year-old kid in high school? I mean, this could be my best friend. I'd say, Nick, listen, brother, I love you. You're like a brother to me. But are you looking at this girl? So I'd set the camera up, and I'd say, you got to take one for the team. I'm going to put you to sleep, Sandman, because you're offering this to a bunch of kids. And now I have a question. Here's how my brain works. Does she get to be in the Me Too movement now? Here's a chick that has, how many followers does she have? Oh, she had over 1,400 likes. I don't know how many followers she has, but it's in the thousands. It's in the thousands. She tweets this for the world to see. And these are the people. I'll tell you what, that's the funniest thing I ever heard an SNL writer write since Chevy Chase stopped falling down the stairs of the airplane. It's mind-boggling to me. And I'm thinking to myself, a 17-year-old kid, you know how far you'd go for one of these? I think it's great. And I think the irony is that she gets to now dictate what sexual harassment is. Isn't it great? I'll tell you, to be a woman, to be a minority in this country, you get to write all the rules. It's mind-boggling to me. The sad part is this is in the news. And the other sad part is there are some of us who have kids, who have girls. And this is what the Democrat Party is. It's hard enough you protect them from these moronic parades where they're walking around these human floats, these punchlines of society, and they're supposed to represent the women's movement. They're supposed to represent the teacher movement. They represent the freaks. They represent the true greed, the true sloth. They represent the true Democrat Party, which is what that party is. And I have to tell you, I've been listening to all of the different complaints about the shutdown that affects absolutely 0% of the real people. Don't get me wrong. If you're on the nipple of one of these municipal jobs or these government phony baloney occupations, well, then I guess it bothers you. And I know they wrapped up the Coast Guard. Ooh, the Coast Guard. What is the Coast Guard? It's where all the connected guys went to hide during Vietnam. Do me a favor. Stop wasting gas, tooling around with your sunscreen on, and sit the hell home. Good for you. Because the reality is the portion of government that has shut down didn't exist 15 years ago. Did you know that? 15 years ago, these number of people didn't work for the government. So all we've done is go back to the workforce of the federal government of 15 years ago. Ta-da! Big deal. Too bad we can't visit the debt so easily. Because what's really happening is he's winning. And the anger from party of about the shutdown isn't on the Republican side. Trump is winning. Once again, the Democrats have overplayed their hand when it comes to the shutdown. They are dead wrong. The true people don't care. It's outrageous to pretend they do. And the reality is, why would they? How many of us, I mean, I travel now. I have to, I opened up the business in Florida, and I have to go back and forth. I travel, and I was just in the airport, I don't know, maybe 12 days ago, give or take, 11, 12 days ago. And I'm in line, and you get to recognize the people when you travel. And the TSA people, I make fun of them, mainly because, they're built like plumbers. And they wear that Gaddafi costume, which I still can't figure out. But you do get to know them. And one guy in Florida, he's actually from the Chicagoland area. And I'm walking past him. I'm like, man, are you aggravated? You know what he said to me? He goes, I'm kind of waiting for the check. I'm kind of looking forward to the big check. And I said to myself, really? So and then he's the one that told me, listen, we have an option to borrow money at 0%. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when we got a letter notifying us the shutdown was happening, it also came with a letter that said, if you need money during the shutdown, we will arrange $3,000, 0% interest-free loan. And I thought, and I want to clarify with it, and I'm trying to Google it now, but I thought it was per month. And if that's the case, well, then what's the big deal? Not only that, this is a true window of opportunity. If the Republicans could pull their head out of their asses and come up with a solution, old ladyface Mitch McConnell would go out to the floor and say that the GOP, of which I'm the head of the Senate, has arranged for all government employees to have the equivalent of their paycheck loaned to them at 0%. Now, you take away all of the torque, all of the leverage of the frauds in our society called the Democrat Party. Because the reality is, and we could point to the vacations ad nauseum and the difference. And I forgot who it was, the Brett girl, Edwards, who said there really is two worlds in America. But what he didn't tell you is what those two worlds are. And that is the ruling class, the politicians, and the rest of us. And what they have mastered, like Mozart, is how to play those sections of society against each other. And the stupid nature of the people who play along are the equivalent of this SNL writer, who is so stupid, so juvenile, so sophomoric, but knows how to leverage her sexuality in order to make a point, in order to vent her anger. It's really despicable. And all I kept thinking about is this kid, when you look at this kid, right? She's a young girl. She's all posed sexy, like all these kids do in their social media. All I'm thinking about is her father is probably, if not my age, a couple of years older than me. Can you imagine your daughter writing for the world to see, I will blow whoever manages to punch that MAGA kid in the face? It's so despicable to me. It is so breathtaking. And it gets so little play. Because the reality is, where you heard this? Fox News. You heard this on Fox News. You didn't hear it on the very station that promotes SNL, which is funny because for once, SNL would have produced something that gave a chuckle to at least a certain section of our society out there. And it would have got the kid punched in the face had he been my best friend. But he's not my best friend. But he is a 16-year-old kid. He's a 16-year-old kid who's in the middle of a nationwide controversy. And unlike that fraud in the Parkland shooting, he is not using it to promote himself. He's not using it to leverage himself to get into some specific college or to raise money or credibility. And the nice thing is he's not running around speaking Marxism. What this kid's doing is looking for an opportunity to at least give you his position, at least tell you what really happened from his position in it. And what's funny is it's broken down into one interview. But I'm curious to know, because I didn't hear this. I have to tell you right now. So I'm going to hear it for the first time. It's Nick Sandmann, and they're asking him, what's going through your mind?
In that moment, he's looking at you, you're looking at him. What's going through your mind?
I wanted the situation to die down, and I just wish she would have walked away. But I knew as long as I kept my composure and didn't do anything that he might perceive as aggressive or elevation of the conflict, that it would hopefully die.
Now, see, this is curious to me because I came from a neighborhood where we used to, I mean, when I was a kid, it's a million years ago, we used to fight each other. That's what we did. We'd go to different neighborhoods. My neighborhood's better than yours. It's funny. Now I'm friends with the guys, and I live in the neighborhood we used to drive to fight. And you'd go to these things, and it would be that walk up on each other. And our fights, in where we're from, they didn't go like this. You get in arm's length, it's go time. But this kid is a 16-year-old kid. And for those of us who have kids of that age, you realize the difference in maturity, the difference in awareness, the fact that they've been sheltered and that, it's completely different game now as when we were kids. And for this kid to have the confidence that nothing would happen when you have the black Israelites, who, by the way, is 3 times the size of this kid, who is, like we said yesterday, the Black Klan. And they're speaking verbiage that is beyond threatening. And then you have, which has got to look funny to me, although I own a cigar store, I would ask where the store is, the Indian walk up on you banging the drum. But I give this kid a lot of credit. Either that or he's was too scared to move. It's one or the other. But here's the question as to, this is funny to me because it's obviously asked by a woman. Why didn't you walk away? Because each one of us are men. We have a gene in us that we realize at that certain point, you can't walk away. In particular, when you're surrounded. Walk away. Where's he going to walk to? He's in the middle. He's being shouted at. He's got people walking up on him. He has nowhere to walk away. Let's hear it.
Now I wish I would have walked away. I didn't want to be disrespectful to Mr. Phillips and walk away if he was
I don't know
trying
if I
to
buy that.
talk to me. But I was surrounded by a lot of people I didn't know that had their phones out, had cameras, and I didn't want to bump into anyone or seem like I was trying to do something.
Well, then this is how you know. One of two things. Either the kid's lying or he's covering up for how afraid he was. Because this is just, from a guy from my neighborhood, this goes so crazy. You come walking up, you're shouting at us, and we're 40 guys, and even though we think we're going to get our derriere kicked, this could have ended up in a catastrophe and violence. Because the reality is, boys fighting men, boys are going to lose, even though there's more of them. And to ask him if he feels threatened, did it look like a nervous smile or didn't it? I don't know. Let's hear what he has to say.
And what's it been like to be at the center of the storm?
Well, it's weird to see your face on television. I've been reading a lot. And, I've also been getting a lot of messages from people, both support and a lot of hateful things.
So he's been getting support. And I keep thinking to yourself, I always like to look at something as if it was, as if it was in my, you're going to get the phone, Justin? As if it was in my family, in my inner circle. This kid is great. Hello? And the reality is, can you imagine loving this kid and having him go through this? The combination of anger, the combination of, you'd be afraid for him. Can you imagine that? Oh, it's all right. I didn't see you. All right, let's go to Sue. Sue in Palos Heights, how are you? Oh, so tell him to initiate it, will you, buddy? And is Sue up? All right, we're working on getting Sue on the line. In the meantime, he's asked other questions, which this is the other thing. If you're the parent, when we're parents for kids, this is the main concern, that someone will hurt your kid. This is what it's like, in particular at these teenage years, because you're trying to show them right from wrong. You're trying to correct them. And in our society, you're being pulled in directions we as parents don't like. Not only that, you send your kid away to Washington. You're hoping that this is an experience he likes, and you end up, and this kid's on the news. Can I get to Sue now, buddy? I want to hear what you... Oh, all right. Won't get to Sue. Let's hear more on the Covington.
There have been many threats against our lives, against our parents. Some of these threats include that we should all be locked in the school and it should be burnt to the ground, the school being bombed, school shooting threats. It's really scary. I know that a lot of people are scared to go to school tomorrow and won't be attending because of what could happen.
So this is the thing when you're dealing with the socialists. Socialists feel that virtue is on their side, right? They're utopian statists. So they feel that the problem with society is that we just don't entrust it to their ideals of right and wrong, even though forget about the fact that it's a moving target, right? That it changes from month to month depending on who's doing it. For instance, if you ask this dirty pig who offered to blow people for punching this kid in the face, she'd tell you what a great female example she is of women's rights. I mean, the hypocrisy knows no bounds when you are completely confident in your views and you view anyone who doesn't agree with you as not as equal to you. In fact, you view that they need to be ruled. And this is what the core is of the socialist. You're simply in his way to get to paradise. And if you would only conform, now how are you going to conform? We're going to offer it to you. And if you don't agree with it, we're going to threaten and beat you, because this is the face of what real socialism is. Socialism isn't nice. Socialism is tyranny. And their belief structure, whether it's the dimwit or Ocasio-Cortez. And here's the thing, she's just regurgitating what she's been told. Doesn't have the ability for individual thought. So she's just regurgitating the indoctrination that she has been told time and time again. Or it's the people who feel the anger to call up this school and say, I'm going to blow you up. You should be burned. You should be raped by priests. That's what socialism is. That's what the face of the Democrat Party looks like. And it's happened like this for decades. This isn't new. This is what the communists were in the 30s and the 20s. This is what they are today, only they call themselves Democrats. And the idea that you're threatening kids, these are the very same people who during the school shootings say, look at us, we've been telling you, and don't you care about the kids. This is the schizophrenia of beliefs in their brain. It is truly a sickness. It is a sickness of ego and entitlement. What's nice and what's refreshing is when young people don't have it. Or when you can use this as an example to teach the young people. Look at the good Democrats calling and threatening you death or physical violence or rape. That's the good Democrat right there. And if you think I'm wrong, how do you explain Pritzker? Little fat J.B. Pritzker, right? His little big boy pants on. He's talking about, the fact of the matter is why Bruce Rauner lost, why he lost complete credibility is he showed you who he really was. And he passed HB 40, I think it was. And he made everybody pay for abortions. Now, some of us recognize abortion for what it is, the greatest genocide to ever hit the planet. It's a true Holocaust. In fact, it's unbelievable what we do to each other. In fact, you've got 55 million kids you've killed for no reason other than the mother didn't have a checking balance. She was busy. She wanted to get high. Whatever way in which a woman wraps the ability to kill her kid and whatever excuse she's coming up with at that moment, it's irrelevant. And then there's some of us who say, look, I'm so dead set against it, it nauseates me. I don't even like to be around you people who believe in it. But if you're going to force me to, whatever. I grew up in a neighborhood. I'm sure I knew a lot of murderers. No big deal, right? We just stay away from me and my family and don't get me involved. And then we have a governor in Bruce Rauner who does get us involved. And most of us are getting our little W-9s back, right? And they show how much taxes they took out of your check, or you're going to figure out how much you have to pay on top of it. And you realize I'm enabling this. These scum among us that are killing babies, they do it on our dime. And it's, for me, it's too much to bear, to be quite honest with you. It's just too sickening to bear. And then Pritzker, who runs on how great he's going to make things for kids, right? We're going to give all the things to the schools. You're going to have health care. You're going to get a stipend. That's their new thing, with $500 a month to just a little walking around cash, right? It's going to be great if you just let us in charge. And by the way, if you are going to have one of these kids that I care so much about and you want to kill it, I got you covered. And how are we going to do it? Oh, and we're going to expand it. Instead of when Bruce Rauner signed House Bill 40, it just made us pay for anybody that came in. So you could come from out of state, which is why Illinois is the greatest abortion dumping ground on the planet. You come in here, we pay, we got you, you pay for the abortion. That didn't cover state workers, apparently. And what Pritzker said is, we're going to make it a little bit more. It's going to be more progressive for women's productive rights. And the way in which they wrap this verbiage, this is what I was trying to communicate to Verlon the other day. This isn't a liberal belief system, okay? We allow them to call themselves liberal. There isn't a greater evil on the planet than this. And I find it particularly nauseating when a Jewish man proposes this, a Jewish man who his family went through with the Holocaust. And you can't recognize that's government killing a section of the society because they said they weren't wanted, they weren't good, they weren't useful. And you're allowing mothers to do this to their children. And if you were really, here is a socialist idea for the socialists, and this should make everybody happy. Some of the greatest generation is that generation that we call it the World War II generation. Well, what they refuse to connect is that a lot of those kids grew up in orphanages. Did you know that? Back then, Hershey, Pennsylvania, probably one of the most successful private orphanages. They used to take any kid that came in. Old man Hershey, his wife couldn't have kids. They were a little eccentric. And they built an entire community with his money. And he raised a number of orphans. And it's funny when you look at that orphan list from Hershey, Pennsylvania, and you see the captains of industry it produced and the good, solid people it produced. And there's always a way, because that's what your future is the babies that are not born. And the idea that a platform of a political party is to slaughter those babies at the cost of those of us who believe it is the greatest evil, such as myself, is the true definition of government tyranny. So in other words, what government says to me, what they say to people like me, what they say to people who recognize, I understand you're the mom. You still can't kill a kid, though. That's bad. And DCFS doesn't even want me to smack my kid, but you get to kill him as long as we don't have to look at the face when you do it, which is the true cowardice cover-up for murder. As long as I don't have to look at you, go ahead, kill him, right? What this is the truest definition of control and tyranny over the citizen. You're taking my property and you're using it to what I believe to be completely and absolutely immoral. And this is the same party who used to say that about war. This is the same party who used to say that about capital murder. So in other words, this is the conflicting issue of our day. Because the same people who say it's okay to kill the absolute innocent, it's not okay to kill the guilty. I tell you, you can't write this stuff down. It's that's an SNL skit. And I wonder if she'd be willing to blow you for it. And what you see around the world is complete and utter chaos and corruption and people in really that are unqualified. And I don't just mean the elected ones like J.B. Pritzker, but I mean the unelected ones, having an influence in our society. And this has been my argument against some of the Trumponomics, where I feel that one man and his group of cohorts do not have the ability, do not have the power to take over and control laws and taxation and regulation. I think it's against the republic we were guaranteed. It's against the covenant I was given by my government, where I had a representative and he was going to influence laws. I think it's diabolical. And one of the main things I find despicable is when really unqualified people are in positions due to nepotism. And this brings me to Jared Kushner, probably the smartest hermaphrodite I've ever seen in my world. Because all you have to do, this is a guy, you want to talk about marrying well. He makes Melania Trump look like a preschooler, because this is what you call marrying well. And from him being the presidential son-in-law, he has influenced things that the most of us will really not be aware of, whether it's the Saudi Arabian relationship, whether it's negotiations not just in the Middle East or in Israel, but negotiations with Europe. He's all over the place, and he is basically the modern-day Kissinger. And we all know how great he was. But the only difference is Kissinger had at least some sort of a background, some sort of a history. He wasn't simply an heiress to a real estate fortune that Donald Trump thought would be a great merger for him, because that's what Jared Kushner is. And he has come up with an idea to solve DACA, and it's green cards for DACA recipients. And this is Jared Kushner's idea. And you're hearing it pushed out by the press secretary as if it's Donald Trump's idea. So now I was discussing it with the producer in there, and I said, Jared Kushner, this is a smart son of a gun, kid. You could learn a lot, marry well, and you, too, could be the advisor to the president. And that's really all Jared Kushner did. I don't know where Jared Kushner's credentials come from other than the fact he's Donald Trump's son-in-law. But yet he gets to change a major, major policy that those of us who supported the position of Donald Trump when it came to immigration, those of us that agreed with his position, we are now being stabbed in the back. And what do I mean by that is DACA. DACA itself is something that on principle is illegal, is unconstitutional. is the example of an imperial president dictating by fiat and writing a law. It is very similar to Obamacare. And instead of us discussing it on principle and throwing it back to lawmakers and then say, if you want to do this, vote on it. Put your name on it. And from that, we will know how to vote in the next election cycle. But the cowards that are Congress don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And now they don't have to. So you could argue that the majority of why Trump is in was his position on immigration as campaigned on. Yet none of those things are on the table anymore because of his son-in-law. How is that part of the American Republic, part of the American representation I was guaranteed? And the answer is it's none of that. And what's going on behind the scenes, this was the argument I had too with Obama. Michelle influencing policies, writing laws, changing mores of our society. Why? Because they're related to him? Because he deems them necessary? At a certain point, as you get older, as you go through the futility of pretending that we are the land of the free and the home of the brave, that is simply a catchphrase that we get to pull as a trump card every once in a while, pun intended. The more hopelessness you have for a turnaround until you see articles like millennials are refusing to participate by the rules of Obamacare in Zero Hedge yesterday. This is our only chance. This is why I'm so dead set against abortion. This is why I think it's so crucially important to give our kids options in education. And I don't just mean school districts. I find that talk nauseating. I mean the fact that we allow them to seek different ways in which to educate themselves. I love the fact that we have this internet up and we don't take advantage of it except when the teacher says, by the way, go home and look at Khan Academy. But anyway, what you have is we need to get to the future changing the direction and the trajectory of a nation that is on the downslope. And that's what America is. And you could point to it 15 different ways to Tuesday. Start number one with the debt that none of the conservatives talk about anymore and how we're just willing to continue to build that up in order to keep the Ponzi scheme economy going. And that's now the Republican economic plan. So how do we fix it is through changing structural issues of it. And you're going to do that, ironically, by the spoiled kids we've raised. Because the kids we've raised, they're not going to tolerate socialism. What do you mean I got to wait 3 hours for bread? That's not happening now. So when you tell kids they must step and fetch to the onerous Rube Goldberg mechanism called Obamacare, they say F you. F you. So millennials, they're not going to go to their doctor every quarter. They're not going to give them their information. The irony is, I believe the modern-day socialist will be hoisted by his own petard because you're the one that told us to spoil our kids. You're the ones that, you took the influence away from the parents and you tried to make them part of society. But what you forgot is that liberty is inherent in man. None of us start out with the idea of a willing slave. That is taught behavior. That is controlled behavior. That is punitive behavior. That's something you slow cook us in. Where now I have a dimwit, Ocasio-Cortez, who threatens to take 70% of someone's income, and as long as we pretend it's not ours, it's okay. Whereas the men in us 100, 200, 300 years ago would have thrown her off the ship. That's now changed. And we're willing socialists. Well, you only caught those of us from that 25 to maybe 40. Those are the naive Democrat-based willing socialists, them, and the senior citizen who pretends he wasn't a socialist the whole time he was waiting for a Social Security check. That's your base. But these new spoiled brats who opened their mouth and got anything they wanted, that's ironically the hope of the people who like liberty, because they will not tolerate the inherent failures of socialism. They won't tolerate it. Now, you see that unwillingness to tolerate it in the imbecilic Congresswoman, Ocasio-Cortez. You see her contempt, her condescension for American people. Here.
When we talk about marginal tax rates, 70%, we have to say at some point we need to start incentivizing investment in actual people, in working people, and the majority of people. And that maybe just...
Yay! And all the self-loathing failures cheer.
maybe this idea of idealizing this outcome of maybe one day you too can be a billionaire and own more than millions of families combined is not
How are you gonna do it?
aspirational or good thing.
Man, oh man, what a think tank this is. And in their world, you know how you become a billionaire? You cooperate and collaborate and collude with the government. See, that's what it is. They're backdooring the economy. And they have. In America, the government has successfully overtaken the means of production through what they call operating penalties, whether it's taxes or regulation. It's compliance. It's servitude. They have successfully done that. Who is our hope to defeat that? Ironically, the very spoiled brats we complain about. Because wait till you see these kids who have wished upon a star and we made it appear. Wait till you see how they take to socialism. Now, the failures of society will always welcome socialism. The self-loathing, the ones who hate their daddies who maybe did well or their grandfathers like Pritzker, they won't really practice it because the infrastructure of corruption is already called their trust, and they have no way to influence that, which is why it's easy for Pritzker to cast new taxes and new penalties upon us. He doesn't pay them. He's never paid them. His trust is older than his father. So it's already got the ways in which to slither around any regulations he throws up. Now, philanthropy. He's just giving away somebody else's money. I mean, he's a philanthropist in the same way the mistress stripper of a rich man is a philanthropist. It's not her money either. Just give it away. Let's listen to the dimwit even more.
Do you think it is moral for individuals to, for instance, do we live in a moral world that allows for billionaires? Is that a moral outcome?
Why is it immoral?
It's not.
No, it's not.
It's not. And it's not. And I think it's important to say.
So she said you could be a billionaire before this.
I don't think that necessarily means that all billionaires are immoral. It is not to say that someone like Bill Gates, for example, or Warren Buffett are immoral people. I do not believe that. But I believe
that he kicks his dog. Or
right.
Like
yeah.
That.
I don't. I'm not saying that. But I do think a system that allows billionaires to exist when there are parts of Alabama where people are still getting ringworm because they don't have access.
See, that's the contempt when the very thing she's promoting is the most immoral thing in history and always has been. What she's promoting is government dictate, mandate, and mitigation of wealth and rights and freedom. See, what you're doing with these idiots is you're re-arguing the Enlightenment. You're re-arguing if you'd have the property rights and freedom you were given by God, by nature. That's what you're re-arguing. And she's telling you this, and this imbecile asking her the question, how could it be anything but immoral to seize the property of someone? That's called theft. You throw people in prison for that unless you give them a government job. That's the definition of immorality. Their philosophy is immoral on its face. But for some reason, we backtrack. How could it not be immoral to seize and control the production of a citizen providing something? These billionaires didn't just, well, I guess they did if they're Pritzker. Most of them don't just wake up and they're billionaires. The true immorality is in this utopian statist vision of paradise where her and that idiot asking the questions get to make the rules on me and you. That's immoral. It's as immoral as slaughtering your baby, the true definition of innocence. Yet this is the philosophy that believes in both. The Democrat Party is immoral, period, end of story. Most of the Republican Party is immoral, because they are practicing tyranny disguised as a law. It's a weapon. It's not a law. You can't write a law that impugns on my freedom. That is not a legitimate law, and it is directed to control me. It is to be a restraint on my freedom. So it's time, and tear it apart while I'm alive, will you please? Because I'm not going to the gym every third day for nothing. If we're going to do it, let's just do it. I'm sorry. I know it's outrageous, but the idea that this isn't outrageous to the vast majority and this is somehow something that gets votes is sickening in this country. Now, you could point to Venezuela right now where they're trying to stage some sort of military coup, but it's been like that for 15 years. And these Buffoons are writing about what an economic success it is. Paul Krugman, fraud, Keynesian, scumbag, collectivist who believes he's better than you. And I had a guy come in my cigar store. And he's from another cigar store. And a couple guys knew him, and they called him Communist Tony. Hey, Communist Tony comes in. And he comes in, and we start talking. He's not really a communist. Because here, if you think I'm for corporatism, if you think I'm for the fact that even as we speak, where is the article? Deutsche Bank is involved in the greatest money laundering scheme ever. Deutsche Bank isn't capitalism. Deutsche Bank is the picture of government corruption. They got to this point because they've paid politicians to get there and to stay there. And they're part of bailout schemes, like all these other frauds, AIG, you name it. That's not capitalism. That's not what I'm for. So Tony and I can agree that dark money to politicians, that the fact that politicians like Mitch McConnell amass fortunes and Dianne Feinstein's husband, we have a common ground. None of us are for that because that's not capitalism and freedom. But where we disconnect is when Tony wants to control cradle-to-grave life. See, because in his world, he speaks to you in that Dick Durbin, Mr. Rogers, I've got my sweater on and my nipples are warm. It's keeping everything great, and I know what's better for everybody. See, to them, you're stupid, and you're too stupid for your freedom. They don't have the courage to tell you that. So they have found a way to dress it in propaganda into a utopia where anybody who isn't giving their money back to government, like who she mentioned, by the way. Why do you think she mentioned Bill Gates and the park flasher Warren Buffett? Because they're interwoven with government, and they make it look like charity when the fact is it's a tax write-off. It's another shill where they profit from. They don't really give away the money, they say. They're just giving away taxes they'd pay. Oh, write that down on a T-shirt. That's what that is. So when they come up and they put their lipstick on and they tell you how moral they are and they tell you how immoral freedom and property is, beware the tyrant and notice the cheers. But have hope. Have hope. Ironically, they will be hoisted by their own petard in the very spoiled brat they insist we create. Because here's the real cheese. These spoiled little punks that are 14 and 15 and 16, I don't care how you pose it, they're not going to tolerate it. Hopefully I'll be alive to see it, because I've been alive to see the detriment, the creeping of communism disguised as Democrat Party. And that's why it's represented in these old haggard frauds. The problem is Bernie Sanders' wife is a teacher, and she's the very teacher that influenced this pretty dimwit, Ocasio-Cortez. So stay patient, because the reality is humanity isn't meant to be restrained. We're not happy being slaves. And whether it takes 100 years or 400 years or 4,000 years, we will break the shackles. The problem is, and the job is, and the obligation is for us to recognize the shackles, for us to heckle the shackles. Because here's the other thing about rich frauds like J.B. Pritzker. He doesn't like to be noticed. He doesn't want you to recognize his schizophrenia, his conflicts of ideas, the way in which he speaks and the way in which his accountants live. He doesn't want you to know it, but recognize it and point it out for what it is. It's not just corruption. It's not just fraud. It's not just immoral. It's their foundation. But that's not Liberty's foundation. And here at the Liberty Hour, we will not go down quietly. We will not sit complacently, and we will not be afraid. This is the Liberty Hour. I'll be in next Sunday, 8 to 9 on my regular terrestrial radio. I can't swear, but it's still a lot of fun. I got my guy Macbeth, and he likes sandwiches. We'll be back Sunday night.